Hello. The sun bathed the picturesque streets of Brookfield in a golden glow, casting warm light on Emma and Michael's pristine white picket fence and lush garden. To any observer, they were the embodiment of small-town perfection. Michael, an architect with an eye for beauty and precision, often said their home reflected the love and effort they put into their lives together. Emma, a freelance writer with a captivating smile, was the darling of their social circle, admired for her wit and elegance. Their evenings were spent sharing laughter over dinner, swapping anecdotes about their day. Michael adored Emma, always finding ways to surprise her. A handwritten note in her morning coffee mug, a bouquet of her favorite lilies just because. To their neighbors and friends, they were the couple everyone envied. But behind Emma's effortless charm lay a disquiet she couldn't explain. While Michael seemed content, Emma often felt suffocated by the routine. The life she'd once dreamed of, security, comfort, and love, had become a gilded cage. She found herself longing for something she couldn't name, an ache she buried beneath polite smiles and perfectly crafted appearances. On this particular day, as Michael kissed her goodbye before heading to work, Emma lingered on the porch, gazing out at the horizon. She couldn't shake the feeling that her life, so carefully constructed, was missing something vital. She dismissed the thought as silly, an indulgence she didn't deserve. After all, what more could she want? Unbeknownst to her, the answer was already on its way, dressed in red, waiting to shatter her perfect facade. That evening, Emma attended a charity gala in the neighboring town. Michael, tied up with a late meeting, encouraged her to go alone, knowing how much she loved the social scene. Dressed in an elegant emerald gown that hugged her figure, Emma radiated confidence as she mingled with donors and acquaintances, her laughter echoing through the grand hall. Amid the crowd, her eyes caught a figure standing near the bar, a man dressed in a striking crimson suit, his demeanor magnetic. He stood apart from the polished guests, exuding an air of danger and intrigue. Emma couldn't help but notice how his gaze lingered on her, a look not of admiration, but of challenge, as though he could see through her practiced smiles. Their eyes met again as she sipped her champagne. Moments later, he was beside her, holding out his hand. "Victor," he introduced himself, his voice smooth and rich like velvet. "Emma," she replied, suddenly self-conscious. "Emma," he repeated, as if testing how her name felt on his tongue. "You seem out of place here." The comment startled her. "Out of place? I don't think so," she said, her tone light but defensive. "Oh, I think you do," he said with a smirk. "You wear the role well, but there's something restless in your eyes. You don't belong in a room full of predictable people." Emma laughed nervously. "And you think you do?" "I never claimed that," he said, his gaze piercing. "But unlike the others, I don't hide it." Intrigued and unsettled, Emma found herself drawn into a conversation unlike any she'd had before. Victor spoke with an intensity that made her feel alive, as though he were offering her a glimpse of a world beyond the monotony she had grown so accustomed to. When the evening wound down, Victor leaned closer. "Life is short, Emma, too short for regrets. If you ever feel like stepping out of your perfect little box, you know where to find me." Before she could ask what he meant, he slipped a card into her hand and disappeared into the crowd. Emma stared at the card, her heart racing. It bore no address, just a single phrase. "Red skies are calling." Emma slipped the card into her clutch, telling herself it was meaningless. Yet, as she drove home that night, her thoughts were consumed by the man in red and the unsettling thrill he left behind. Emma tried to dismiss the encounter as a fleeting curiosity, a strange interlude in an otherwise normal evening. But Victor's words lingered in her mind, echoing louder with each passing day. Her carefully curated life now felt suffocating, her once comfortable routine suddenly unbearable. A week later, she found herself at the edge of town, staring at the card Victor had given her. The phrase "red skies are calling" felt like a riddle she needed to solve. She hesitated, her pulse quickening as she dialed the number printed beneath. Victor answered after the first ring. "I wondered how long it would take you." The calm confidence in his voice made her both uneasy and exhilarated. "I don't know why I'm calling," Emma admitted, gripping the steering wheel. "Of course you do," he replied. "You're bored, Emma. You're searching for something that scares you." His words struck a nerve. "What are you offering?" "Not offering. Inviting," he said. "Meet me at Crimson Hollow tomorrow night. Midnight." Without waiting for her response, he hung up. Emma sat in silence, clutching her phone, torn between anger and curiosity. She knew she should ignore him, but something primal inside her urged her to go. The following night, Emma arrived at Crimson Hollow, an abandoned warehouse cloaked in shadows. Victor was waiting, dressed in red again, his presence commanding even in the darkness. "Emma," he greeted her with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Welcome to the game." "What game?" she asked, crossing her arms to mask her unease. Victor stepped closer. "A game where you break the rules, where you challenge everything you thought you knew about yourself." Emma's heartbeat quickened. "And what are the rules?" "There are none," he said. "Only limits. The ones you set for yourself, and the ones you dare to cross." The air between them felt charged. Emma hesitated, sensing the danger in his words but unable to resist the allure. "And what's the price?" Victor leaned in, his voice a whisper. "Your loyalty. Nothing more, nothing less. This stays between us." Emma took a deep breath, her mind racing. She told herself it was just a harmless experiment, a temporary escape from the monotony of her life. She extended her hand, sealing the pact. Victor's smile widened. "Good. Let's begin." Little did Emma know, she had just taken the first step into a world she couldn't control, a decision that would cost her more than she could ever imagine. The game began innocuously, with Victor assigning Emma small challenges designed to push her out of her comfort zone. At first, it was simple, wearing something bold, speaking her mind to someone she'd usually placate, or breaking a minor social rule. Emma found the exercises exhilarating. They filled her with a sense of liberation she hadn't felt in years. "You're starting to feel it, aren't you?" Victor asked one evening after Emma completed a particularly daring task. Walking into a high-end boutique, trying on an expensive dress, and walking out without buying it, leaving the clerk visibly annoyed. Emma laughed, flushed with adrenaline. "Feel what?" "That thrill. The power of doing something you're not supposed to. It suits you." Emma brushed off his comment, but deep down, she couldn't deny it. The game made her feel alive, in a way that her safe, predictable life never had. As the weeks went on, Victor's challenges grew bolder. One evening, he handed Emma a blindfold. "Put this on," he said, his tone commanding but calm. "What are you planning?" she asked, wary but intrigued. "No questions. Just trust me." Against her better judgment, she obeyed. Victor guided her through the city streets, her heart racing as she heard the muffled sounds of passing cars and distant voices. When they stopped, he removed the blindfold. They were in a luxury penthouse, the skyline of the city glittering through floor-to-ceiling windows. Victor poured 2 glasses of champagne and handed one to her. "Tonight, you learn the art of deception," he said, his voice low and hypnotic. "What does that mean?" Emma asked, feeling both excited and uneasy. "It means you're going to walk out of here, go home to your husband, and act like nothing has changed." Emma froze. "But nothing has changed. This is just a game." Victor leaned closer, his dark eyes piercing hers. "That's what you tell yourself. But you're lying, Emma. To yourself, to him. You've already crossed the line. You just don't want to admit it." His words hit like a punch to the gut. She wanted to argue, but the truth was undeniable. She'd been keeping secrets, taking risks, and feeling alive in ways she hadn't in years. When Emma returned home that night, Michael was waiting for her. He kissed her cheek and asked about her evening, completely unaware of the whirlwind she had just experienced. Emma smiled and told him it had been uneventful, the lie slipping from her lips effortlessly. But as she lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling, she realized Victor was right. She had crossed a line, and there was no going back. What she didn't know was that Michael had started to notice her changes, and he wasn't as oblivious as she believed. Michael prided himself on his ability to read people, a skill honed through years of architectural negotiations. Lately, Emma's behavior had set off subtle alarms. She was still her charming, attentive self, but something beneath the surface felt different. At first, he chalked it up to stress or boredom. She'd taken on fewer freelance projects recently and spent more time out of the house, often offering vague explanations about errands or meeting friends. Michael dismissed these as harmless until her phone habits began to change. Emma had always been casual with her phone, leaving it on counters or in the living room. Now she carried it everywhere, even to the bathroom. She was quick to lock it when he approached and noticeably nervous when notifications buzzed. One evening, while Emma was in the shower, Michael noticed her phone on the nightstand, screen glowing from a recent message. He hesitated. Spying wasn't his style, but curiosity gnawed at him. The message preview read, "Red skies tomorrow. Midnight. Be ready." His chest tightened. The words were cryptic, but something about them felt wrong. He resisted the urge to snoop further, telling himself he was imagining things. But as days passed, Emma's absences and secrecy gnawed at him. Michael began paying closer attention. He noted the nights she came home later than usual, the faint scent of unfamiliar cologne lingering on her clothes, and the faraway look in her eyes when she thought he wasn't watching. He tried addressing it subtly. Over dinner one night, he asked, "Is everything okay? You seem distracted lately." Emma smiled, her response practiced and easy. "I'm fine. Just restless, I guess. Nothing to worry about." But Michael wasn't convinced. One night, Emma claimed she was meeting a friend for drinks. Michael decided to test his growing suspicions. After she left, he waited 10 minutes before grabbing his jacket and heading to the bar she had mentioned. When he arrived, Emma was nowhere to be seen. He checked the tables and even asked the bartender, who confirmed no one fitting her description had been there. Michael's stomach churned. The reality he'd been trying to deny was now undeniable. Something was going on, and Emma wasn't being honest. As he drove home, his mind raced with possibilities. Was she having an affair? Was she in trouble? Whatever the answer, Michael knew one thing for certain. He couldn't ignore the signs any longer. That night, as Emma slipped into bed beside him, Michael lay awake, determined to uncover the truth. If she had crossed a line, he was prepared to confront her, on his terms. The following evening, Emma left the house claiming she needed time to clear her head. Michael's unease deepened as he watched her drive away. He had already taken steps to prepare for this moment. Earlier that day, he had installed a small GPS tracker under Emma's car, desperate to uncover where she was going. Sitting in his office, Michael monitored the tracker on his laptop. The blinking dot moved steadily through town before stopping at an unfamiliar address near the industrial district. It wasn't a restaurant or bar, it was a rundown warehouse. His heart pounded as he debated his next move. Should he follow her? Should he confront her? He decided to wait, watching the screen intently. Emma's car didn't move for over an hour. Inside the warehouse, Emma was standing across from Victor, her hands trembling slightly. The room was dimly lit, filled with shadows and a palpable tension. "This is bigger than a game now, Emma," Victor said, circling her slowly. "You've proven yourself capable of deception, of breaking the rules you once clung to. Are you ready for the next step?" Emma swallowed hard, torn between exhilaration and dread. "What's the next step?" Victor leaned in, his voice a whisper. "Trust me completely. Leave your old self behind. No more guilt, no more hesitation. Only freedom." Emma hesitated. She had told herself from the beginning that this was just a harmless escape, a way to feel alive. But Victor's demands were growing darker, his influence more pervasive. She felt trapped in a web of her own making, unable to resist the thrill he offered, yet terrified of where it might lead. Victor smirked, sensing her conflict. "Don't overthink it. You've already chosen this path. All that's left is to walk it." Back at home, Michael's patience wore thin. The warehouse location gnawed at him, and the longer Emma stayed, the more convinced he became that she was hiding something far more insidious than he had imagined. Unable to wait any longer, he grabbed his coat and car keys. As he drove toward the warehouse, his mind replayed every moment of their marriage, every promise they had made to each other. He wanted to believe there was still an explanation that didn't involve betrayal, but deep down, he already knew the truth. When Michael arrived, he parked a block away and approached on foot. The warehouse loomed before him, its broken windows glowing faintly from the light inside. He slipped into the shadows, creeping closer until he could see through a crack in the door. What he saw made his blood run cold. Emma was standing inches away from Victor, their faces close, their body language intimate. She wasn't resisting. She wasn't being coerced. She was choosing this. Michael clenched his fists, his chest heaving with a mixture of rage and heartbreak. He could have stormed in, demanded answers, but he didn't. Instead, he pulled out his phone and captured the moment, a damning image that would become the cornerstone of his revenge. As he walked back to his car, his mind was no longer consumed by questions. Now it was consumed by a single burning desire to make them both pay. The next morning, Emma returned home, her demeanor as polished and composed as ever. Michael was in the kitchen, brewing coffee, acting as though nothing was amiss. She kissed him on the cheek, a routine gesture that now felt hollow to him. "You were out late," Michael remarked casually, handing her a mug. "Yeah, lost track of time," Emma replied, her tone light, but her eyes briefly avoiding his. Michael noticed, but he said nothing. Instead, he observed her closely, noting the faint tension in her shoulders and the way she clutched her coffee as if seeking comfort. That afternoon, while Emma was out running errands, Michael took the opportunity to search for answers. He rummaged through her purse, drawers, and even her closet, careful not to disturb anything. Just as he was about to give up, he found it. A folded card tucked inside the lining of her clutch. "Red skies are calling." The phrase sent a chill through him, a direct link to the cryptic message he'd seen on her phone. On the back was a series of dates and times, one of which matched the night before. Michael sat down, staring at the card, anger simmering beneath the surface. This wasn't just a one-time lapse in judgment. This was premeditated, deliberate. When Emma returned home, Michael acted as though nothing had happened, but his mind was racing. He began piecing together a plan, one that required patience and precision. He didn't just want to confront her. He wanted her to feel the same pain and humiliation she had inflicted on him. Over dinner, Emma seemed more relaxed, oblivious to Michael's growing resolve. She laughed at his jokes, complimented the meal, and even shared stories about her day. To an outsider, they would have seemed like the perfect couple. But Michael knew better. Later that night, as Emma slept soundly beside him, Michael stared at the ceiling, clutching the card in his hand. He realized that simply exposing her betrayal wouldn't be enough. He needed to dismantle everything she and Victor had built, to strip away their secrets and leave them broken. The first step was gathering more evidence. The second was ensuring that neither Emma nor Victor saw him coming. As he lay in the darkness, a cold determination settled over him. Emma had underestimated him, and so had Victor. By the time he was done, they would both wish they had never crossed him. Michael waited patiently for the right moment. Over the next week, he continued to observe Emma's behavior while quietly collecting evidence. He tracked her car again, recorded her late-night phone calls, and even managed to access some of her texts through an old backup on her laptop. Each new discovery deepened the wound, but it also fueled his determination. One evening, Emma was in the shower, humming softly, oblivious to the storm brewing just beyond the bathroom door. Michael sat on the edge of their bed, holding his phone with trembling hands. On the screen was a recording from the previous night. Emma laughing with Victor, her voice filled with an excitement Michael hadn't heard in years. When Emma emerged from the bathroom, wrapped in a towel, she found Michael waiting for her, the phone still in his hand. His expression was calm, but his eyes burned with quiet fury. "We need to talk," he said, his voice low and steady. Emma froze, her instincts immediately kicking in. "About what?" she asked, feigning innocence. Michael held up the phone, pressing play. Victor's voice filled the room, followed by Emma's unmistakable laugh. Her face drained of color. "What is this?" she stammered, her towel slipping slightly as she clutched it tighter. "It's the truth, Emma," Michael said coldly. "The truth you've been hiding from me." Emma opened her mouth to respond, but no words came. She stared at him, her mind racing to formulate an explanation. A defense, anything to defuse the situation. "I know about the meetings," Michael continued. "The texts, the phone calls, the late nights. I know about Victor." Emma's knees buckled, and she sat down on the bed, her towel dampening the sheets. "Michael, it's not what you think." "Then explain it to me," he interrupted, his tone sharp. "Tell me what this is. Tell me why my wife has been sneaking around behind my back with a man who isn't her husband." Tears welled up in Emma's eyes. I didn't mean for this to happen. It started as nothing. Just something to feel alive again." Michael let out a bitter laugh. "Alive? You mean lying to me, sneaking off with another man, and laughing behind my back? That's what makes you feel alive." "It wasn't physical," Emma blurted, desperation creeping into her voice. "I swear, Michael, it was just a game." "Don't insult me, Emma," he snapped. "I don't care if it was physical or not. You betrayed me. You betrayed us." For a moment, silence hung in the room, heavy and oppressive. Emma looked at Michael, her tears falling freely now, but his expression was unyielding. "I loved you," he said quietly, his voice breaking slightly. "I would have done anything for you, but you threw it all away. For what? For some thrill? For some game with a man you barely know?" Emma sobbed, reaching for his hand, but he pulled away. "This isn't over," Michael said, standing. "You don't get to destroy everything we built and walk away unscathed." As he left the room, Emma collapsed onto the bed, her body racked with sobs. She had underestimated Michael's pain, his resolve. She had no idea what he was capable of, or how far he would go to make her pay. Michael spent the next few days focused on Victor. If Emma's betrayal had hurt, Victor's role in it infuriated him. It wasn't enough for Michael to confront his wife. He needed to understand the man who had inserted himself into their lives and why. Through the texts and recorded calls he'd retrieved, Michael pieced together a clearer picture of Victor. He wasn't just a man offering Emma forbidden thrills. He was a manipulator, someone who thrived on luring others into his web and exploiting their vulnerabilities. Using one of Victor's texted locations, Michael followed him one evening to a high-end lounge downtown. He watched from a distance as Victor schmoozed with a group of well-dressed people, his charisma filling the room. Michael approached one of the bartenders, slipping him a generous tip. "The guy in the red jacket, Victor. Know him?" The bartender nodded, leaning in. "Yeah, he's here a lot. Talks big, spends big. Heard he's into unconventional business. Not someone you want to cross." Michael's jaw tightened. He could see Victor for what he was. A predator, preying on people like Emma, bored and vulnerable, desperate for escape. But Michael wasn't just anyone. The next day, Michael dug deeper into Victor's background. Using his contacts and resources, he uncovered a sordid history. Victor wasn't just a manipulator. He was a professional con artist. His games often ended with financial or emotional ruin for his targets, who were too ashamed or afraid to come forward. Victor's charm masked his darker nature. He had no intention of forming meaningful connections or offering Emma any real freedom. To him, she was just another pawn in his game, another notch in his belt. Michael's rage boiled over. If Victor thought he could walk away unscathed, he was sorely mistaken. Michael wasn't like the other people Victor had manipulated. He was methodical, calculating, and above all, relentless. That evening, Michael sat across from Emma at the dinner table. She was quieter than usual, her guilt evident in her every movement. "I know who he is," Michael said suddenly, his voice calm but firm. Emma froze, her fork halfway to her mouth. "Who?" "Victor," Michael replied, setting down his glass. "I know what he's done, not just to you but to others. He's a fraud, Emma. A liar. He doesn't care about you. You were just his latest project." Emma's face paled. That's not true. Don't defend him, Michael interrupted sharply. I have proof. I've seen the trail of destruction he's left behind. And now, thanks to you, he's dragged us into his mess. Tears filled Emma's eyes again. She didn't have the energy to argue or defend Victor, not when Michael's accusations rang so true. You've made your choice, Michael said, his voice cold. But now it's my turn. You and Victor think you've been playing a game, but you've forgotten one thing. Emma stared at him, her voice barely a whisper. What's that? Michael leaned forward, his expression unyielding. I don't lose. Emma shivered at the intensity in his eyes, realizing for the first time just how far Michael was willing to go. And deep down, she knew she deserved whatever was coming. Michael's plan was now in motion. With the evidence he had gathered, he crafted a trap that would expose Victor's deceit to Emma and simultaneously dismantle Victor's carefully constructed facade. The goal wasn't just to end their relationship. It was to destroy the illusions they both clung to. Using a fake email account, Michael posed as a wealthy investor and contacted Victor, offering a lucrative deal too tempting to resist. Victor, always eager for an opportunity to expand his influence, quickly agreed to meet at an upscale restaurant. Michael chose the venue carefully. It was one Emma frequented with her friends, ensuring she would be there at the same time. On the night of the meeting, Michael played his part flawlessly. From a nearby table, he watched as Victor arrived, his trademark crimson jacket a beacon of arrogance. Victor scanned the room, oblivious to the storm brewing around him. Emma, unaware of Michael's involvement, was seated with her friends across the room. When she spotted Victor, her face lit up with a mixture of surprise and nervous excitement. She glanced around, as if ensuring no one noticed her reaction, and excused herself to the restroom. Victor, seeing Emma slip away, followed her. Michael had anticipated this. In the narrow hallway leading to the restrooms, Emma turned to face Victor. "What are you doing here?" she asked, her voice low but urgent. Victor smiled, the same disarming grin that had lured her in weeks ago. "Just business." "And you?" Emma hesitated. "I'm here with friends." "You shouldn't be." "Relax," Victor interrupted, stepping closer. "No one suspects a thing. You're overthinking, as always." But before Victor could say more, Michael emerged from the shadows. His sudden presence startled them both. "Not overthinking," Michael said coolly. "Just finally seeing things clearly." Emma's eyes widened. "Michael? What are you doing here?" Michael ignored her, focusing his icy gaze on Victor. "It's funny, isn't it? The man who prides himself on manipulation, caught so easily in his own web." Victor's confident demeanor faltered. "Who the hell are you?" "I'm her husband," Michael replied, his voice steady and controlled. "The one you thought was too oblivious to notice. The one you underestimated." Victor smirked, attempting to regain control. "Listen, man. Whatever you think is going on, save it," Michael snapped, cutting him off. "I know exactly who you are, and I've made sure everyone else will, too." He held up his phone, displaying a video recording of their exchange. Emma's betrayal was undeniable, and Victor's identity as a manipulator was now exposed. Emma's face crumpled with shame. "Michael, please, I didn't mean." "You didn't mean for me to find out," Michael interrupted. "But you did mean to betray me, and now you'll both pay for it." Victor's smirk vanished, replaced by a flicker of fear. "You can't prove anything. You have no idea who you're messing with." Michael smiled, his calm composure more chilling than any outburst. "You're wrong. I know exactly who I'm messing with, and I've already won." As he walked away, leaving Emma and Victor standing in stunned silence, Michael felt a cold satisfaction. The first stage of his revenge was complete, but it was only the beginning. Michael didn't stop at exposing Victor and Emma. That was just the prelude. He began quietly dismantling Victor's reputation, using the evidence he had gathered to contact Victor's past victims. By posing as an anonymous whistleblower, Michael leaked Victor's schemes to local authorities and prominent business circles. Soon, Whispers about Victor's true nature began circulating. Meetings were canceled, opportunities evaporated, and his carefully cultivated image started to crumble. At home, Michael kept his distance from Emma. Her attempts to apologize were met with cold indifference. "This isn't over," he told her, leaving her to wonder what he meant. Emma felt trapped, her guilt mounting as Michael's silent rage loomed over her. She had no idea that the worst was yet to come. Victor, now desperate to regain control of his life, reached out to Emma. "We need to talk," he said during a frantic phone call. Emma hesitated but agreed, still clinging to the illusion that Victor cared for her. They arranged to meet at a secluded cafe. What Emma didn't know was that Michael had anticipated this. He followed her, staying hidden as he recorded their conversation. During the meeting, Victor revealed his true colors. "You were a distraction, Emma. A fun one, but that's all it ever was." Michael smiled grimly as he captured her heartbreak on video. Another piece of his plan fell into place. Michael played the recording for Emma that night. She sobbed as Victor's cruel words echoed through the room. "You wanted to feel alive?" Michael said coldly. "Now you know the cost." Emma begged for forgiveness, but Michael refused. Instead, he handed her divorce papers, his voice devoid of emotion. "You don't deserve me." As Emma's world crumbled, Michael sent the recording to Victor, ensuring he knew that his betrayal had been exposed. Michael's final move was the most devastating. Using the evidence he had collected, he ensured Victor's financial dealings were scrutinized by the authorities. Victor was soon under investigation for fraud, his accounts frozen and his reputation in ruins. Meanwhile, Michael moved out, leaving Emma alone to face the wreckage of her decisions. Emma and Victor were left broken, their lives shattered by Michael's meticulous revenge. Emma, once vibrant and confident, now lived with the weight of her mistakes. Michael, however, felt no remorse. As he started a new chapter in his life, he carried the satisfaction of knowing that justice had been served, on his terms. Bye-bye.